From London, this is The World Today.
Hello, I'm Robin Dwyer. Welcome to the programme. Our top stories. Bringing an end to the fighting in Gaza. Hamas outlines its three-stage truce plan in response to an Israeli-backed ceasefire proposal. People in Gaza desperately hope a truce can be agreed as concerns grow over a further Israeli ground assault. Snowstorms bring travel chaos to parts of China as hundreds of millions of people try to reach loved ones for the Lunar New Year. And Paris ushers in the Year of the Long as France and China celebrate 60 years of diplomatic relations. Hamas says it has given its response to a proposal for a new ceasefire in Gaza after talks mediated by Qatar and Egypt. The plan from the Palestinian militant group would contain 3 phases of 45 days. In the first, all female Israeli captives, males under 19, the elderly and sick would be freed in exchange for the release of Palestinian women and children detained in Israeli jails. The second would see all remaining male hostages released by both sides. And in the third, the remains of those killed during the fighting would be exchanged. By the end of the third phase, Hamas says it expects an agreement to end the conflict, with Israeli forces withdrawing completely to allow the reconstruction of Gaza. The truce would also increase the flow of food and other aid into Gaza. The threat of starvation has reached critical levels, with the entire 2.3 million population facing famine. There's only been 1 week-long pause in the fighting since the conflict began on October the 7th. It started when Hamas attacked areas of southern Israel, killing at least 1,300 people and taking about 250 hostages. Since then, authorities in Gaza say Israeli attacks have killed more than 27,700 Palestinians. Well, let's talk now to our correspondent, Sarah Coates, who's in Tel Aviv. Sarah, has Israel responded to this proposal from Hamas?
Nothing official yet, Robin, but Hebrew media is quoting senior Israeli officials as saying they simply cannot accept these demands. We do know that the Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, he's had a one-on-one sit-down in Jerusalem with the Secretary of State. A readout from his office, I'll give you that. It was long and in depth, so certainly remaining very tight-lipped on this meeting. After that, there was an expanded meeting with some of the top military brass. He's now sitting down with the President, Isaac Herzog, before travelling to Ramallah. But certainly not much optimism here in Israel, given these massive gaps we're really seeing between these two positions. On one hand, you've, of course, got Israel, which continues to say that it will not stop this war. It will not pull back its troops from Gaza until all of its goals in the Strip are achieved. And Netanyahu's been stating this day after day, that is defeating Hamas, killing all of Hamas's leaders. While on the other hand, you have Hamas, and it continues to demand a ceasefire. So in saying all of this, Robin, certainly a very tough task for the Secretary of State.
And Sarah, we've been hearing from some of the relatives of those Israeli hostages, which just adds to the pressure on Israel's Prime Minister to secure a deal.
It certainly does. They are desperate. They want their loved ones home at any cost, believing that this could be the last chance to secure the release of their loved ones. We do need to remember that the IDF informed 31 families over the last day that their loved ones are dead in the Strip. They didn't know any information before then. There have been protests right around the country today, and also there in London. Let's take a listen to one of the relatives that has an elderly father being held in the Strip.
I want to say that every night I go to sleep and I think about my father. I think about him the whole day. Every time I put a blanket on my shoulders, I think of his cold shoulders. I hope that his mental well-being is okay. I hope that he has the strength. It's very hard to survive something when you're frail.
And Robin, protests are once again happening right now down at the tri-border crossing, the Kerem Shalom crossing, the border with Egypt, Gaza and Israel. People breaking through a closed military zone. They are blocking aid trucks from going into the strip, demanding absolutely no aid goes in there until the captives come out. Robin.
Sarah, thank you very much. Our correspondent Sarah Coates in Tel Aviv. People in Gaza's southern city of Rafah say they're desperately hoping for a truce as concerns grow over a looming Israeli ground assault. The United Nations warns that any military incursion in the area would amount to a large-scale loss of life. Rafah sits on the border with Egypt and is now home to around 1.4 million displaced Palestinians. Israel has ordered people to evacuate, threatening to storm the area with tanks when it finishes a battle in nearby Khan Yunis.
It's enough. It really is enough. We don't want any more wars. We've been displaced from Gaza for nearly 115 days now. We've been completely abandoned, along with our children. Now we've been struck by all sorts of diseases. It truly is enough.
We want a truce. We want people to live in safety. Most of all, we want to live. We want to live like everyone else. Our children and little babies are dead. All we want is to live in peace.
Well, let's talk now to our correspondent Akram Al-Sassari, who's in Rafah. So, Akram, you are in southern Gaza. What's the situation like there?
Well, the situation in Rafah is extremely catastrophic. Around 1.4 million Palestinians are now internally displaced. People in Rafah, and also the original population of Rafah, are extremely concerned about any ground operation that might start anytime soon. They're facing different challenges when it comes to securing the food, securing the water, securing the mattresses, securing the blankets, and also securing something that keeps them warm in this very critical time and this very cold season of the year. Palestinians have been circulating the news about possible ceasefire. They have been optimistic, but that optimism comes with caution because they understand there's still a long way before the Israeli government or the Israeli cabinet answers and gives a response about this deal. They're hopeful. They wait to hear some good news, then they expect some good news. They want to go back to their homes in Gaza and the north, but they also believe that there might be some ground operation starting in Rafah, and that would risk their life, would risk their livelihood, would risk their stability, and would risk their shelter that they have resorted to for the 6th or 7th time now.
And are there any signs of this ground assault by the IDF that's being talked about?
Well, there were some signs in Rafah area in particular where we're staying now. The bombardment was taking place throughout the last 2 days in some different areas of Rafah. Some of the area is Rafah crossing area, some other area are in the different neighborhoods, eastern neighborhoods of Rafah area. One strike at least took place in the western neighborhoods of Rafah, but overall it looks like the bombardment has been intensified for the last 2 or 3 days and that the targeting is still ongoing, and it looks like an attempt by the Israeli occupation forces to secure some strip that would allow their entry to Rafah area. That strip comes from the very east to the very west, and it looks like they have been choosing the peri-urban and the rural areas to target them. Apparently, they might be targeting an infrastructure that is built and run by the Palestinian factions in the hope that they would be securing as safe as possible access to their troops to the area. So the population is waiting, is anxious, and is fearful from very large-scale ground operation to start in Rafah, and with a very large number of people, the repercussion would be more than just catastrophic.
Akram, thank you very much. Our correspondent Akram Al-Sassari in Rafah. The United Nations has urged countries not to forget civilians caught up in Sudan's 10-month-long conflict. It's appealing for $4.1 billion to meet humanitarian needs, as well as support for those who fled to neighbouring countries. Fighting between the Sudanese army and paramilitary rapid support forces has devastated the country's infrastructure. The UN says half of Sudan's population, around 25 million people, is in need of assistance.
It is important to reiterate our call, especially to the military leaders here in Sudan. They have to go back to peace talks. They have to go back to a meaningful peace track, at least starting with a ceasefire so that people can go back to their homes, the millions of those that have been displaced.
Snowstorms and freezing rain are causing travel disruption in large parts of China as millions of people are on the move for the Lunar New Year holiday. Central provinces, including Hubei and Hunan, are among the worst hit. Hundreds of flights and train services have been cancelled or delayed. The government's allocated more than $20 million to try and minimise disruption. Our correspondent Huang Yichang is in the capital of central Hubei province, Wuhan, one of the cities hardest hit by snow and freezing rain. So Yichang, what's the latest where you are?
Hi, yes, Robin, due to the weather challenges in recent days, yesterday we reported that 130 railway trips were cancelled. But today, as the snowfall has finally ceased and the weather continues to improve, the transportation system within the city has been largely improved. So the railway transportation system is gradually returning to its normal capacity, and to accommodate those passengers stranded ahead of the Spring Festival. Today and tomorrow, an additional 70 high-speed railway trips will be scheduled. And in the aviation system, things are also back to normal. The first flight took off from Wuhan at 7 in the morning, marking the resumption of the full-scale air operations. And turning attention to the highways, as of last night, more than 20 out of 44 congestion points have been cleared, but some areas are still experiencing slow moving traffic due to high volume and also remaining ice. The urban transportation is also fully restored thanks to the dedicated efforts over the past few days. And yeah, back to you.
Huang Yichang in Wuhan, thank you very much. You're watching CGTN. Still ahead. Rebuilding from the rubble. Chile gets to work clearing up the devastation caused by forest fires.
Ever wondered what's the difference between a bear and a bull market? Where are the cash cows? And who are the lame ducks? And what exactly are black swans? Grey rhinos and unicorn companies. Make sense of it all with Global Business, only on CGTN.
I think it should be more global cooperation.
I would like to hear more the voice of the developing countries.
Globalization has lifted more than 1 billion people out of poverty.
The green transition has to happen. It's a necessity.
For China and the United States are important powers in the world.
What unites us is much more than what divides us.
And I believe China is committed to this agenda.
Join me, Juliet Mann, to set the agenda at these times every weekend on CGTN.
Events have consequences. Words create impact.
One more offensive in a long line of battles that's been ongoing for more...
Just got to be careful here with some gunshots. Excuse us.
The world today matters for your world tomorrow.
The number of casualties is growing quickly.
Why, this is one of the hardest hit towns in the region.
The world today, every day on CGTN.
Welcome back. A reminder of our headlines. Hamas outlines its three-stage truce plan in response to an Israeli-backed ceasefire proposal. Palestinians desperately hope a truce can be agreed as concerns grow over an Israeli ground assault in Rafah. And snowstorms bring travel chaos to parts of China as hundreds of millions of people try to get home for the Lunar New Year. China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi says equality, innovation and mutual benefit are at the heart of bilateral relations between Beijing and Switzerland. Wang made the remarks during a meeting with his Swiss counterpart. Our correspondent Yo Yang reports.
Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi says China would work together with Switzerland to create new prospects for the bilateral innovative strategic partnership. He made remarks at the third round of China-Switzerland Foreign Ministers Strategic Dialogue held in Beijing on Wednesday.
We're glad to see that since the establishment of bilateral ties between China and Switzerland 74 years ago, China and Switzerland have become the model of friendly cooperation between two countries with different social systems, different development stages, and different sizes. The bilateral relationship have withstood the test of a turbulent world and maintained stability and growth. I believe we have jointly embarked on a successful path of equality, innovation, and mutual benefit.
Swiss Foreign Minister Ignacio Cassis expressed his best wishes to the Chinese people for the upcoming New Year. He said that Switzerland firmly adheres to the One China principle and has mutual understanding and candid exchanges with China.
Ce qui fait qu'aujourd'hui, le plaisir est encore plus grand d'être ici et de...
The differences between Switzerland and China do not affect the cooperation between the two sides, and the relationship between the two countries is solid and strong. It maintains good development momentum. We are willing to work with China to deepen cooperation in various fields and work together to further develop the innovative strategic partnership and mutually beneficial cooperation.
The Swiss Foreign Minister's visit to China comes after China's Premier Li Qiang's official visit to Switzerland this January. A number of European leaders and diplomats have paid a visit to China at the beginning of this year. Those include Norwegian Foreign Minister Espen Barth Eide, as well as Belgian Prime Minister Alexander De Croo. Experts say this visit demonstrates the broad and extensive collaboration between China and Europe, and they believe this collaboration should continue to deepen. The year 2025 marks the 75th anniversary since China and Switzerland established diplomatic ties. Over the course of this year, the two sides will hold working group meetings on finance and energy, education policy, and consultations on UN Security Council affairs, parts of joint efforts to develop closer communication between the two sides. Yo Yang, CGTN, Beijing.
Sweden has dropped its investigation into the 2022 explosions on the Nord Stream pipelines over its lack of jurisdiction in the case. The pipelines transporting Russian gas under the Baltic Sea to Germany were ruptured by a series of blasts in the Swedish and Danish economic zones, releasing vast amounts of methane into the air. Stockholm says evidence found by investigators has been handed over to German authorities. At least 5 people are dead and dozens injured after a wave of Russian drone strikes on Ukraine's capital and several other cities. Kyiv officials say residential buildings and energy infrastructure suffered most of the damage. Ukraine's military said it shot down 44 missiles and drones launched by Moscow. The whole country was put under an air alert, with attacks reported as far west as Lviv, near the Polish border. At least 26 people have been killed in 2 bomb explosions in Pakistan's southwestern Balochistan province. Both attacks targeted political offices the day before the general election. There's been violence and claims of poll rigging in the run-up to the vote. So far, no group has claimed responsibility for the attacks. Flood warnings remain in place in California, with authorities telling residents not to let their guard down. At least 4 people have died after record-breaking rain in the state. 150,000 homes are without power, and there's been close to 500 mudslides. The intense rainfall was carried to California by what meteorologists call an atmospheric river. The death toll from Chile's worst wildfires on record is expected to rise, with more than 300 people still missing. At least 131 people have been killed in the fires, which began in the Valparaiso region last week, destroying some 26,000 hectares of land. Our correspondent Dan Collins reports.
To escape with their lives was all these people could do. Their belongings and homes were lost to the flames. After the terror and trauma, it was time to start again. The cleanup has begun after Chile's deadliest fire in living memory. But bodies are still being found in the ashes after the huge blaze caught this city unaware. Chileans are used to yearly forest fires in the dry season, but this blaze hit urban areas, and the people were totally unprepared.
The city is completely in shock. It was something we had never seen before. Many people were trapped in the fire and could not escape, and it is very painful for us as neighbors.
Dry weather, strong winds and low humidity helped the fires spread faster. A strong southerly breeze spread the flames with terrible speed until it was almost too late to flee, recalls Jorge Ojeda.
Here it was total panic because all this was covered with black smoke. There were falling clumps of burning vegetation and you could see the fire in the sky with tongues of flames passing back and forth.
In Viña del Mar on Tuesday, Chile's President Gabriel Boric said it was time for action, not words, announcing a 5-point aid and reconstruction plan.
Los habitantes de Viña del Mar, de Quilpué.
The inhabitants of Viña del Mar, of Quilpué, of Villa Alemana have gone through and are going through a situation that has been tremendously catastrophic, exceptional, unprecedented and painful, with the worst fire in an urban area in the last 30 years. As we said in the previous days, this is the biggest human tragedy that we have had as a country since the earthquake of February the 27th, 2010.
He said 30,000 people had been impacted and more than 9,000 homes had been destroyed or damaged. In spite of the tragedy, there was still hope. Young people turned out in droves to lend a hand.
I can't help financially, but I can use my hands and my legs to help people and contribute as much as I can to help the country because the whole region has gone up in flames.
In a warming world, devastating fires like this are becoming more common. Dan Collins, CGTN, in Viña del Mar.
As China and France mark 60 years of diplomatic relations this year, there have also been celebrations to welcome the Lunar New Year. Our correspondent Tony Waterman reports from Paris on a gathering which brought the two occasions together.
Like any good photo exhibit, the one on display at the Chinese embassy in Paris weaves a story. From the original newspaper fronts announcing the beginning of formal China-France diplomatic relations in 1964 to the many official visits that have helped deepen and expand that relationship. There are also numerous economic partnerships and people-to-people exchanges that have fostered understanding and respect.
For the past 6 decades, France and China have kept their word, which is independence, mutual understanding, and mutual benefits. With these principles, the cooperation between our two countries had led to encouraging results. I think cultural and people-to-people exchanges are more important than ever. A good relationship between states is founded on a good friendship between the people.
More than 300 people gathered at the China embassy on Tuesday night to celebrate 60 years of Sino-French diplomatic relations. Guests enjoyed a performance by the Paris Chamber Orchestra, which played Tan Dun's Intercourse of Fire and Water. There was also an impressive, yet nail-biting culinary display. Among the night's guests, business leaders, former ambassadors, and politicians, including former French Prime Minister Jean-Pierre Raffarin.
2024 is a big year for the cooperation between France and China, and it's a year that has a lot of importance for us, with the cultural cooperation, tourism, and it is also the year of the Olympics, where several Chinese athletes will, I'm sure, win gold medals. So I wish everyone, all of my French and Chinese friends, a Happy New Year.
The night was also an opportunity to usher in the Year of the Long, or Dragon in English. In the West, the dragon is often depicted as a dark force, but in China, it's auspicious, a symbol of power and success, much like the relationship between China and France 60 years on from the start of official diplomatic relations. Tony Waterman, CGTN, Paris, France.
And finally, a pod of killer whales trapped in drift ice off Japan's Hokkaido island have escaped safely to freedom. Footage showed the pod of orcas, which included at least 3 calves, struggling to breathe as they huddled in a small patch of open water. The officials originally said they had no choice but to wait for the ice to break up, but they now believe that the whales were able to free themselves through gaps in the ice. The headlines again. Hamas outlines its 3-stage truce plan in response to an Israeli-backed ceasefire proposal. Palestinians desperately hope a truce can be agreed as concerns grow over an Israeli ground assault in Rafah. And snowstorms bring travel chaos to parts of China as hundreds of millions of people try to reach loved ones for the Lunar New Year. And that is the world today. Thanks for watching. There's more news on CGTN Europe's channel on the Telegram app, or scan the QR code on the screen to get stories and updates sent direct to your phone. We're back with more news at the top of the hour. Coming up next, it's World Insight. For now, from all of the team in London, it's goodbye.
Hello and welcome to the weather forecast. I'm Tini. Well, over to Europe. A widespread precipitation will continue here for a vast majority of the continent over the next couple of days. And rain or some light to moderate intensity of rain will be prevailing here for many of the western half of Europe from Thursday into Friday, with potential heavy rain setting the stage here for the western portion of Iberia Peninsula. And wintry precipitation will continue here for many of the north as well as the eastern portions of Europe. And that will lead to rather cold temperatures. And notice that many high temperatures here for the western portion of Russia will be about 10 to 20 degrees Celsius below freezing on Thursday. And no big changes as we head into Friday. So please bundle up and stay safe as well. And here for many portions across the central as well as the western portions of Europe, we'll see relatively suitable high temperatures ranging between 10 to 15 degrees Celsius over the next couple of days. And about business and travel, potential wintry mix for Berlin during the morning hours on Friday with a high of 8 and low about 2 degrees Celsius. And down in Vienna, we'll see some overcast conditions with high temperatures in the double digits, while the overnight low temperatures will be just about 5 degrees Celsius. So please pay special attention to the big temperatures difference between highs and lows. And that is all from me. Stay tuned for more City Forecast.